I'm WG, and in this video you'll learn which partners are good, which partners are bad, and which partners are exactly perfect for which character. So let's start it off with the very baseline. The rule goes the following. It goes 3-star partner, 4-star partner, battle pass partner, and then gacha partner. That is just the way it goes. So if you want to just super simplify it, you were to, for example, let's say we start with our first category, because this is how we're going to do it for the striker category. You were going to, let's see, I think we should be searching for striker. So apply filter. There we go. So you would be going from Douglas into Ritoshka, Lillian, into then Asteria, Marion, Scarlet. So let's talk about it. As we talked about it, if Douglas is your only one, use him. And you know, this AoE damage for a certain like clearing situation can actually be quite useful. So I actually move myself over here into the middle so we don't hide this effect. But yeah, then besides that, he only increases the damage only for the very first turn of a battle. So very temporary. Now Ritoshka has 2 units she's really good on, and that would be Haru. She is the best 4-star partner for Haru, and she's also the best 4-star partner for Owen. Both Haru and Owen have these 2-cost cards for the striker faction, and then this at the start of the turn, one of the assigned combatants' attack cards gains plus 5% damage for every point of the total attack card cost. So for example, if you have 3 basic attacks on the hand that all cost 1, you would add 15% to the next played attack card of the combatant, and then you have a 60% damage increase available for the whole turn in 3 stacks of morale. So that is Ritoshka for you. And then for every other fighter in the game, every other striker in the game, Lillian is most likely gonna be the premier choice, in that when the assigned combatant cards with a cost of 1 or less, they just deal 10% extra damage, which would be true for example, Rin's basic attacks, Rin's cuts, Rin's skills, Maylin's basic attacks, and when you use a skill card, you get attack card damage, which works better on Maylin than it does on Rin, because on Rin your end goal is to go for upgrade cards. So I guess you could make a little bit of a case for Ritoshka, but to be fair, Lillian is still more consistent, easier to use, and this ability to draw 1 attack card from the assigned combatant for a cost of 1 or less is pretty damn nice. Then we have Asteria. Asteria is the same. She'll be used for Owen and Haru. She is the dream partner of Haru, in that you deal the extra damage and then also damage of the assigned combatant's pulverized cards, which just works in Haru's favor. And then you have the extra skill, which allows you to deal up to 200% damage, extra damage with the next attack card based on the total hand cost. So should your hand be worth anywhere from 1 to 10, you get either 20 or 200% additional damage to the next card. So that is Asteria for you. Then we have the Battle Pass partner Priscilla. So Priscilla just flat increases HP, so you are more tanky, but has nothing to do with healing, and then increases the damage dealt. So you just flat out deal 8% more damage, no questions asked, and then an additional 25% damage should an enemy be broken, their tenacity bar destroyed, but that also means you first have to destroy said tenacity bar before you can then deal damage. So you would, for example, want to plan around a bit, kind of trying to end your turn with barely tenacity bar left, and then do like a big burst turn against the tenacity bar or shenanigans like that. And then also you have the ability to deal 250% damage and then apply weakness attack to one of the combatants' random attack cards in hand, which for example, should you only have 1 card in hand, guarantees that card to have the weakness effect. And then it's kind of between Marion and Scarlet for the remaining fighters. So we're talking about everything from a 1 cost. Marion, for example, increases the breakthrough enemy damage, so should enemies be broken by 15%, and the basic cards always apply as weak point damage, meaning they're always effective and they deal plus 5% weakness damage. So this is pretty much good to go for everybody, but specifically Maylin. And then it is pretty decent on everybody else, but it's not the pinnacle as it is for Maylin, and then you just have a very big hit. And then we have Scarlet, who is Rin's dedicated partner, in that you basically want to keep up a chain of only Rin cards. So then you, if the card before used was Rin's card, so like you play a second card, then all of a sudden you get a 15% damage bonus, then for the third you get a 30% damage bonus. Then should you've played 2 or more cards of the same combatant, then you gain focus. Focus then works for the next attack card, gets reset, but then you play another card to regain focus to then reset focus. But it's just all about spamming a bunch of cards of the same character in a row, because the moment you either use a status ailment card or somebody else's card, this streak breaks and you have to rebuild it. It is truly the path to mastery. And then you have this one, which gives you up to 100% damage for a whole turn based on how many buffs this character owns. Or better said, you own, and then that works for the character. So those are all the strikers and who you would and wouldn't use them on. Now let's go over to the Vanguards. So I think we have to kind of like do a refresh here. So Raidel, good, sweet start out, decent shield, decent counter attack, but then we have Wilhelmina versus Rachel. So Rachel should be your go-to for any situation due to the ability to give you massive shield gain. The only exception is Amir. And then when you gain a shield, you have a 20% chance to gain counter attack, which can then further increase your damage dealt, because whenever an enemy attacks you, you can then counter attack, and you also can get a shield and card draw, which is quite nice. In the ego skill, can help you with survivability, can help you find that one card to just increase your damage for that turn. And then we have Wilhelmina, who's just, yeah, straight up damage. The assigned combatant's defense increases by 12%, so the shields become stronger, and then also the defense-based damage becomes stronger. And then when you target a vulnerable enemy, you deal extra defense-based damage, and you can gain yourself 2 morale, so 40% damage bonus, and then 1 stack of fortitude, which is going to reduce the damage taken by 20%, but these are all for 1 turn. So the only situation where you would use Wilhelmina is either Amir, or if you want to play a more DPS focused Magna or Maribel, though I would always recommend Colonel Hamburger Girl. She is the way to go in my heart and should be in yours as well. Then we have Zeta. Zeta is Kalib exclusive. Do not use her on anybody else that is not Kalib, due to her first part only working for instinct cards and the second part only working for celestial cards. So unless you're kind of a madman and you've built a Amir deck with double celestial synergy, there's currently nobody else that uses this part. But you can then also deck search for Kalib's Vulture Launcher. So if you're looking for the most out of the Kalib, Zeta is almost a must-have and a huge boon. Then next up we have Aishlin, the Battle Pass partner that increases health and shield gain, so works for everybody besides Amir, because Amir doesn't generate shields. And when the assigned combatant gains counter attack, you get plus 15% defense-based damage. So that also mainly works for Maribel and Magna. Amir and Kalib don't really generate counterattacks themselves, but you can at least also gain a shield, and this can be quite huge. Like, this has huge future potential, the ability to take a shield from the last turn into the next turn. So if you, for example, focus all your shielding on 1 turn to block 1 big hit, but the shield was so big that you can basically already stay safe next turn, this can be quite nice to like kind of survive like a double outburst. And then lastly, we have Erika, who's just going to be best in slot, obviously, for Magna herself, but also works fantastically well for Maribel, in that you increase the counterattack damage, and when the assigned combatant uses a skill or upgrade card, there's a chance to gain counterattack. Then you also have AoE, up 1 counterattack, and if an enemy's action that they're about to take is an attack, you also get an extra counterattack stacks. So all about counterattacks, counterattack damage, gaining more counterattacks, and it is pretty much Maribel and Magna season. Bringing us over to the Rangers. So for the Rangers, next up we have a whole, let's make sure we actually go just Rangers. We have Nakia, 3-star, use them until you get something else. And then we have the battle between Rosaria and Daisy. Now the battle between Rosaria and Daisy comes down to one thing: Rosaria clears, and that is due to this. Should your hunter have a upgrade card, a enhanced card, which is referring to an upgrade card, so a card with the green symbol and the lightning through it, you pick Rosaria, because you can deck search for that card. Even if you don't find it, you get card draw, and then you also deal additional attack damage, right? Your additional attacks are increased by 10%, and should you use a upgrade or skill card, you also have the chance to gain morale at 25%. And then we have Daisy, who only gains morale at a 20% chance, and only when you draw for the first time you get a 10% boost, and she can at least help a bit with shielding in the shield and the morale for one turn, but I would heavily favor Rosaria over Daisy in pretty much all scenarios. Then we have Tina. Tina is pretty much Hugo exclusive due to only boosting order attributes extra attack damage, and then the extra attack damage from targeting cards at least works on a bit more units. Here you can then draw and also increase extra attack damage, so she is pretty much Hugo specific. The next one is Marin. Marin is Veronica specific in that you increase the extra attack of cards generated, which refers to her ballistas, and when then you use a skill card you deal extra attack damage for one turn. So just full ballista boost, as well as also a 200% damage to all enemies and a skill card. That skill card can then be used to, for example, draw more cards and cycle into more shenanigans, or also overall just help her out. So it's a pretty nice synergy. And then we have the Battle Pass partner, who pretty much broadly works for every single ranger in the game. So you get the extra attack damage when you draw for the first time each turn using an ability. So more towards Veronica, more towards Hugo, not necessarily as much Selena or Beryl, but I mean Beryl can still use it. So I guess the only one that's kind of shafted by this a bit is Selena. You get the extra attack card damage, and then you can also do 250% damage, apply one mark, with mark itself being a further extra attack. So Solia overall quite useful. Then next up we have the Hunters. So for the Hunters, we have Yuri, 3-star, only use until you get a 4-star, and then it's between Akkad and Karate. So Akkad I would mainly recommend towards Luke and Renoa, in that you can increase the bullet card damage, and should you crit hit, bullet card damage increases further, which helps with shooting multiple of the bullets, multiple attempts to just get this to trigger. And also for one turn, increasing the crit chance of combatants' attack cards, so that would be for all your bullets, would be for all your dirge bullets, in kind of that Luke synergy. And then we have Karate. Karate herself just increases the damage of one attack card by 10%, and when you generate a card for the first time, you further increase card damage. So it's more reliable, it's not as crit reliant, and then for one turn you increase the damage of cards generated. So it kind of depends. Like for example, if you have a Renoa that doesn't have any crit, or you're not really looking for any RNG, then Karate is just the more stable way between Karate and Akkad. But Akkad is just, pretty sweet for that Luke. Then we have Kiara. Kiara is pretty much Renoa only, because Renoa is the only one that can reliably stack cards into the graveyard that fast to get the damage increase, and also the only one that really discards cards herself, giving her access to that attack card damage. And then you also have the 200% damage, as well as, depending on how stacked your graveyard is, up to, I guess, infinite damage, right? It depends on how many dirge bullets you generate, but let's say you have 20 cards in the graveyard, that's 400%. Then we have Serethia, Battle Pass partner, critical chance of combatants' attack cards, so flat out just 8% crit chance. Helps if you have crit chance on gear, helps if you have crit chance in potential, helps if your character has crit chance focused, so for example Luke. And then you can just gain crit damage based on dealing crits, as well as also extra damage and vulnerable. So overall, just the most solid choice for example, Luke, unless you have Janet. Janet would then be the 9% crit chance for cards costing 1 or less, so just pretty much every one of Luke's single cards. And this one is very specific, and that is when the assigned combatant uses 5 bullet cards, you get a random handgun bullet. What is interesting, and what will be interesting to see, is what happens if you use this on someone that isn't Luke. Can, for example, a Renoa generate a Luke card, or does this just transform into that character's bullet type, like a dirge bullet or Lucas's bullets, right? That's something that's interesting to see. Maybe this effect doesn't work at all. Who knows, right? And then 150% damage to all enemies, as well as designated cards bullet damage, is overall pretty sweet. So those were your Hunters. Lastly, bringing us to, the second last faction in the Psionics. Psionics are super easy, super straightforward. You have Zatara, you use Zatara. You have Eloise, you use Eloise. Now, Eloise, it's on the first look, she might not seem as strong, but what she just does is she increases attack card damage by 10%, so a straight bonus. And when you exhaust a card, or first gain a stateless ailment card, so Tressa and Charon, who also are your only psionics, you increase attack card damage. And now this one. For one turn, when you exhaust a card, you apply weaken to an enemy. This should stack, so should you exhaust, for example, yeah, let's say you exhaust 10 cards in one turn, all of a sudden you can apply 10 stacks of weaken to the enemy, reducing the next 10 damage instances of that enemy by 25%, which is not to be underestimated, with then Antea being the battle pass partner that just, yeah, the assigned combatant's HP and damage are increased by 8%, and when you generate a card, you get increased attack card damage, as well as AoE and vulnerable. Overall, very, very solid. And Briar being more focused towards Charon, because you get up to 30% attack card damage should you generate a card, which also works for Tressa, but it's all about this. When you generate a status ailment card, you get up to 25% attack card damage, and then here you also can discard all status ailments or even transformed status ailments through the Oath of Vanity just out, and for each card that you get rid of this way, you increase the combatant's attack card damage. So should you, for example, be able to get rid of like 10, you get a 100% damage increase. The only question here though is, if you use Charon's Oath of Vanity, can Briar still provide the damage bonus? She probably does. It would be a weird oversight of the devs to mention it here, but for like every time you properly play Charon, for half of this effect to work, I highly doubt it. Then lastly on the list, we obviously have the controllers. So for the controllers, we have Yvonne. She's pretty solid, pretty sweet, but then it's between Arwen and Alyssa. I would always recommend using Arwen when you can. The only issue with Arwen is you cannot stack Arwen, so if you're running double support, run Arwen and somebody else. So the assigned combatant's HP and healing are increased, straight up just more HP, more healing, but it's all about this Ponopokus cheer, right? So it gives you so think about it like this. If you're facing up to 3 enemies, you can get up to 3 stacks of this. This Ponopokus cheer reduces the damage you are about to take by 10%, going up to 20%. So it's pretty much, you could treat it as 20% permanent damage reduction, and then you can further get a heal and 1 damage reduction. So Arwen is pretty damn sweet. The only issue is you just can't further stack Ponopokus cheer than you already have. Now, Noelle is probably the weirdest 5-star partner, in that she really just works for only 1 unit, and that is Orlea all the way through. 15% the assigned combatants retain cards, damage, shield, and HP. Orlea is the only one with retain cards, and then also you deal extra damage based on how many cards you retained in hand, as well as extra damage to enemies with the instinct attribute. So it's just Orlea mania, as well as 100% heal and activating the retain effects. So she can be a massive boon to any Orlea enjoyers, and she can make Orlea that much more useful, with Nyx might just being the strongest partner out of the battle pass. I'll give you a proper ranking by tomorrow, but what you see here is you get a HP increase and heal increase, and then when the assigned combatant draws for the first time each turn using an ability, plus 8% damage dealt by allies. Okay, right? Like for example, Ray works with this and Cassius works with this, 2 out of our 4 5-stars who can reliably draw to activate this damage increase. But no, it's all about the Errante Hurricane, that you can discard up to 3 and then draw how many you discarded plus 1. So you can just draw 4 cards. You can just discard 3 and draw 4. This is very, very powerful. You could get rid of curse cards, you could get rid of status ailment cards, you could get rid of cards that enemies just place in your hand, you can get rid of basic attack cards of, for example, somebody else, you can deck search. Like, this is really, really strong and might just be a go-to should you be playing a Ray or Cassius. And these were all the partners in the game. I hope you were able to once again take something away from this, and as always, we see each other in the next one. Peace!